Captain June pressed his face against the small window of his mining ship. What he saw made his stomach turn. The planet below was burning. Orange flames spread across the surface like a disease. Where cities had stood just hours ago, now only craters remained. "Captain, we need to leave now," said Yu from the engine room. Her voice shook with fear. "Their sensors will find us soon." June pulled himself away from the window. The Vorthak dreadnought hung in space like a metal moon. It was bigger than any ship had a right to be. Weapons covered its dark surface like angry eyes. The ship had just destroyed an entire world, and it looked like it could do it again without breaking down. "Min, plot a course to the jump point," June ordered. "Keep us hidden behind that asteroid field." Min's fingers moved quickly over the navigation controls. "Course set, Captain, but those Vorthak ships are fast if they see us." "They won't," June said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. The Vorthak had ruled the galaxy for 200 years. Their empire stretched across thousands of star systems. No one fought them anymore because no one could win. The aliens stood 8 feet tall and had 4 arms each. Their skin looked like armor, and their ships were the most powerful anyone had ever seen. June watched through the rear cameras as smaller ships joined the dreadnought. They looked like insects next to their mothership, but each one could destroy his mining vessel with a single shot. The Vorthak fleet had come to punish the planet below for refusing to pay their taxes. The planet's defense fleet had tried to stop them. 20 ships had fought against 3 Vorthak vessels. The battle lasted exactly 7 minutes. Now pieces of the defense fleet floated in space like broken toys. "Jump drive is ready," Yu called out. "Not yet," June said. "Wait until we're clear of their scanner range." The mining ship Prosperity drifted silently through the asteroid field. June had bought the old vessel with his life savings 5 years ago. It wasn't much to look at, but it was home to him and his small crew. They made their living digging rare metals from dead planets and selling them at space stations. It was dangerous work, especially now. The Vorthak demanded tribute from everyone. Independent miners like June had to give them half of everything they found. Those who refused disappeared. Sometimes their ships were found floating empty in space. Sometimes they were never found at all. "Captain," Min whispered. "Look at this." On her screen, Min showed him a news report from the Galactic Network. The reporter, a blue-skinned alien from the Centauri world, spoke in a flat voice. "The rebellion on Kepler 7 has been crushed. War Prime Techmore announces that order has been restored. All remaining resistance groups are advised to surrender immediately." June closed his eyes. Kepler 7 had been home to 12 million people. Now it was ash and rock. "How do they sleep at night?" Yu asked as she climbed up from the engine room. Oil stained her work clothes, and her short black hair stuck to her forehead with sweat. "They don't think like us," Min said. "To them, we're just animals that sometimes get too loud." June had met a Vorthak once, years ago at a trading station. The alien had looked at him the way a person might look at an insect. Not with hate, but with complete indifference. That was somehow worse than hate. The Vorthak War Prime Techmore ruled from a fortress world at the center of their empire. He had never lost a battle. Some said he had never even been challenged. His fleets moved through space like death itself, and whole systems would surrender just from seeing them approach. "We're clear," Min reported. "Scanner range is behind us." "Jump," June ordered. The stars stretched into lines as the Prosperity entered hyperspace. In the strange blue glow of the jump tunnel, June thought about what he had witnessed. Another world destroyed. Another example of Vorthak power. Another reason why no one fought back anymore. The last real resistance had been the Kalari Federation. They had fought the Vorthak for 10 years with everything they had. Their ships were fast and their crews were brave. For a while, people thought they might actually win. But bravery wasn't enough. The Kalari Federation fell 3 years ago when the Vorthak destroyed their home system. Not just the military bases or the government buildings. They destroyed the star itself, turning it into a black hole that swallowed everything. After that, no one talked about resistance anymore. "Where are we going, Captain?" Yu asked. "Station Omega," June replied. "We'll sell what we have and try to forget what we saw. But he knew he wouldn't forget. None of them would. The image of that burning planet would stay with him forever. Just like the images of all the other worlds the Vorthak had destroyed. The ship fell silent except for the hum of the engines. Outside the windows, hyperspace swirled in patterns that hurt to look at directly. June stared at it anyway. It was better than closing his eyes and seeing flames. Hours later, they dropped out of hyperspace near Station Omega. The trading post orbited a gas giant in neutral space. Technically, it belonged to no one, but everyone knew the Vorthak could take it whenever they wanted. Other ships floated near the station. Freighters, passenger vessels, and mining ships like his own. All of them flew under different flags, but they all had one thing in common. They all paid tribute to the Vorthak Empire. As they docked, June noticed something odd on the station's sensor displays. Far out at the edge of the system, the sensor showed a single ship approaching. It was small, smaller than most freighters. The strange thing was that no one recognized its design. Probably just another refugee ship, Min said when he pointed it out. But something about it bothered June. The ship moved with purpose, not like refugees running from something. It moved like it had somewhere to go. On the side of the unknown ship, the sensors picked up markings in a language no one had seen before. Below the strange writing was a symbol that looked like a blue and green circle. The ship's name, according to the computer's translation attempt, was Indomitable. June shook his head and focused on unloading his cargo. Whatever that ship was, it wasn't his problem. He had enough troubles already without worrying about strangers from unknown worlds. But as he worked, he couldn't shake the feeling that something important was about to happen. Something that would change everything. In the depths of space, the Indomitable continued its steady approach toward the inner system, where a Vorthak patrol waited with the patience of predators who had never known defeat. Captain Hyun stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched the alien ships through her main screen. She had short black hair and calm eyes that missed nothing. Around her, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. "Analysis complete, Captain," said Commander Young from the tactical station. He was tall for a human, with careful hands that moved over his controls like a musician playing an instrument. "The large ships are definitely warships. Heavy armor, lots of weapons, but their design is interesting." "How so?" Hyun asked. "They built them like floating fortresses. All firepower and heavy shields, but they're slow. Really slow. And their weapon placement suggests they only know how to fight head-on battles." Lieutenant Jin looked up from her communications console. "Captain, I'm picking up transmissions from the civilian ships. They're speaking at least 6 different languages, but my computer is translating most of it." "What are they saying?" "They're afraid. Really afraid. They keep mentioning something called the Vorthak Empire." Jin's fingers moved over her controls. "From what I can understand, those big ships belong to some kind of ruling power. The civilians are paying them money or goods," Hyun nodded. In her 3 years commanding the Indomitable, she had seen many things in deep space. But this was their first contact with an organized galactic civilization. Earth's government had sent them to explore and make peaceful contact with any aliens they found. "Sir," called out Lieutenant So from the sensor station. "The alien warships are moving toward the civilian convoy. Their weapons are charging." On the main screen, 3 massive ships approached a group of smaller vessels. The warships were dark gray with angular designs that looked like they were built to intimidate. Weapon ports glowed with orange light. "Jin, try to contact both groups," Hyun ordered. "Let them know we're here for peaceful reasons." "Yes, Captain." Jin worked at her station for several minutes, trying different frequencies and translation programs. Finally, she got a response. "Captain, one of the civilian ships is responding. Audio only." A voice filled the bridge, speaking heavily accented English. "Unknown ship, this is Captain June of the mining vessel Prosperity. You need to leave this system immediately. The Vorthak will destroy you if you interfere with their operations." "Mr. June," Hyun replied through the communication system. "This is Captain Hyun of the Earth vessel Indomitable. We're explorers from a distant system. We don't wish to interfere, but we're curious about the situation here." There was a long pause. Then June's voice came back, sounding surprised. "Earth? I've never heard of that world." "Listen, Captain Hyun, the Vorthak don't negotiate. They don't show mercy. If you stay here, they'll kill you just to prove they can." Before Hyun could respond, another voice cut through the communication channel. This one was deeper and spoke with authority that expected to be obeyed. Attention, unknown vessel. This is Squadron Leader Morthek of the Vorthak Imperial Navy. You have entered a restricted zone without permission. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Hyun looked at her crew. Young was studying his tactical displays with the focused attention of a professional soldier. Jin was monitoring multiple communication channels at once. Engineer Bin was checking the ship's systems from his station near the back of the bridge. Squadron Leader Morthek, Hyun said calmly. I am Captain Hyun of the starship Indomitable. We come in peace from the Earth system. We would like to establish diplomatic relations with your government. The alien's laughter was harsh and unpleasant. Diplomatic relations? You command a single small ship, human. You have nothing we want and nothing we fear. You will surrender your vessel and submit to interrogation, or you will die. I'm afraid we can't agree to that. Hyun replied politely. However, we're willing to meet with your representatives to discuss our presence in this region of space. Your presence ends now, Morthek snarled. You have 30 seconds to power down your weapons and prepare for boarding. Any resistance will result in the immediate destruction of your ship. Young looked up from his station. Captain, I'm reading 3 heavy cruisers. Each one is about 10 times our mass. Their weapons are old-fashioned but powerful. Particle beams and nuclear missiles mostly. What about their defenses? Strong shields, but they're uniform. No adaptive frequencies. Their armor is thick but doesn't look like it's designed to handle precision strikes. Hyun considered her options. The Indomitable was a deep space exploration vessel, but it was built by humans who had learned to survive in hostile environments. Earth's history was full of conflicts, and human engineers never built a ship without thinking about how to defend it. 20 seconds. Human. Morthek's voice crackled over the speakers. Jin, open a channel to all ships in the area, Hyun ordered. Channel open? Captain. To all civilian vessels, this is Captain Hyun of the Indomitable. Please move to a safe distance from the combat zone. We will attempt to resolve this situation peacefully. Captain Jun's voice came back immediately. Captain Hyun, you don't understand. No one fights the Vorthak. Their ships are too powerful. 10 seconds, Morthek announced. Hyun looked around her bridge one more time. Her crew was ready. They had trained for situations like this, even though no one had expected their first alien contact to be hostile. Mr. Young, prepare for evasive action. Ms. So begin tactical analysis of their weapon systems. Mr. Bin, I want full power to shields and engines. Time's up, human, Morthek declared. You chose death. On the main screen, the 3 Vorthak cruisers began moving toward the Indomitable. They moved in a straight line formation, their weapons charging for a coordinated attack. It was exactly what Young had predicted, a head-on assault with overwhelming firepower. Civilian ships are moving away from the combat zone, Jin reported. Captain Jun is trying to warn us again. He says the Vorthak have never lost a battle. There's a first time for everything, Hyun said quietly. The lead Vorthak cruiser fired first. A stream of particle beams lanced out toward the Indomitable. But the human ship wasn't where the aliens expected it to be. Jump complete, Young announced as the Indomitable reappeared behind the Vorthak formation. Enemy ships are turning to engage, but they're slow. Return fire, Hyun ordered. Precise targeting only. Disable, don't destroy. The Indomitable's weapons were different from anything the Vorthak had seen. Instead of massive particle beams, the human ship fired small, precisely aimed projectiles that moved at incredible speeds. The kinetic round struck the rear cruiser's engine section with mathematical precision. Direct hit, so reported. Enemy ship's propulsion is offline. On the communication channel, they could hear Morthek shouting orders in his own language. His voice was angry but also confused. The other 2 cruisers were trying to turn around to face the human ship, but their massive size worked against them. Captain, Jin said, I'm intercepting their communications. The alien commander is asking his subordinates how we move so fast. Hyun almost smiled. The Vorthak had grown used to fighting enemies who matched them ship for ship, weapon for weapon. They had never faced an opponent who refused to play by their rules. Mr. Young, prepare for another micro-jump. Target the lead ship's weapon systems. Aye, Captain. In the civilian convoy, Captain Jun watched his sensors in disbelief. The single human ship was dancing around the Vorthak cruisers, like a fighter avoiding slow, clumsy giants. Every time the aliens fired, the Indomitable was somewhere else. Every time the humans fired back, another Vorthak system went offline. This is impossible, Yu whispered from beside him. But it was happening. For the first time in 2 centuries, someone was not just challenging the Vorthak Empire. Someone was winning. Squadron leader Morthek stared at his tactical display with growing rage. The human ship had just appeared behind his formation again, and another of his vessels was sending damage reports. This wasn't how battles were supposed to work. All ships concentrate fire on Sector 7 Alpha, he commanded. Destroy that pest before it can move again. The 2 remaining Vorthak cruisers turned their massive weapon arrays toward the Indomitable. Hundreds of particle beams and missiles streaked through space toward where the human ship had been just seconds before. But the space was empty. Impossible, Morthek growled. No ship can move that fast. On the Indomitable, Commander Young was coordinating what humans called micro-jumps. These were tiny hyperspace hops that lasted only a fraction of a second. Most species considered them too dangerous to use in combat, because the calculations had to be perfect. A small mistake could send a ship into a star or an asteroid. But humans had always been good at taking calculated risks. Jump complete, Young announced as the Indomitable appeared above the Vorthak formation. We're in their blind spot. Captain Hyun studied the tactical display. The Vorthak ships were powerful, but they were designed for a different kind of war. They expected enemies to stand still and trade shots until the stronger side won. They didn't know how to fight an opponent who refused to follow their rules. Target their communication arrays, Hyun ordered. If we can stop them from coordinating, they'll be even less effective. Lieutenant So worked at her weapons console with steady hands. Targeting systems locked. Firing. The Indomitable's kinetic weapons were marvels of human engineering. They fired small metal slugs at incredible speeds using magnetic acceleration. The projectiles were so fast that most shields couldn't stop them, and they hit with the force of small asteroids. The lead Vorthak cruiser shuddered as the kinetic rounds tore through its communication dish. Sparks flew from damaged systems, and the ship's coordination with its companions suddenly became much more difficult. Direct hit, So reported. Their command systems are offline. On the mining ship Prosperity, Captain June watched the battle with amazement. His crew gathered around the sensor displays, hardly believing what they were seeing. The human ship is smaller than our mining vessel, Min said in wonder. How is it fighting 3 cruisers at once? Look at how it moves, Yu pointed out. It's not trying to overpower them. It's cutting them apart piece by piece. June had fought in battles before the Vorthak took control of his home system. He understood tactics well enough to see what the humans were doing. They weren't fighting a war of destruction. They were fighting a war of precision. Every shot the Indomitable fired had a purpose. Engines to stop movement, weapons to reduce firepower, communications to prevent coordination. The humans weren't trying to kill their enemies. They were trying to disable them. Captain, Jin called from her station on the human ship. I'm intercepting more Vorthak communications. They're calling for reinforcements. How long until help arrives? Hyun asked, unknown. Their long-range communications are damaged, but they might have backup systems. Young looked up from his tactical display. Captain, the second cruiser is trying to ram us. They're using their engines to build up speed. Hyun nodded. It was a desperate move, but potentially effective. The Vorthak ship was so much larger that even a glancing collision could cripple the Indomitable. Evasive maneuvers, she ordered. Use their size against them. The Indomitable dropped toward the Vorthak cruiser as it approached. At the last second, the human ship fired its engines and slipped underneath the alien vessel's belly. As they passed beneath the massive ship, So fired a precisely aimed burst at the cruiser's main reactor housing. The Vorthak ship didn't explode. Human weapons were designed to disable, not destroy. But the reactor went offline, leaving the massive cruiser drifting powerless in space. 2 down, Young reported. 1 to go. The last functional Vorthak cruiser was commanded by sub-leader Vector, Morthek's second in command. He had watched his squadron fall apart in less than 15 minutes. Nothing in his training had prepared him for this kind of battle. All weapons, continuous fire, he ordered his crew. Blanket the entire sector. They can't dodge everything. The remaining cruiser opened fire with every weapon it had. The space around the Indomitable filled with energy beams and explosive projectiles. It was like flying through a storm of death. But the human ship continued to move in ways that seemed impossible. It twisted and turned through the deadly rain of fire, its pilot using 3-dimensional thinking that the Vorthak couldn't follow. How are they doing that? Vector demanded of his sensor operator. Unknown, sub-leader. Their ship seems to predict where our weapons will be before we fire them. What the Vorthak didn't understand was that humans had been fighting each other for thousands of years. They had learned to think tactically in ways that peaceful species never developed. The crew of the Indomitable could read the pattern of enemy fire and predict where the next shots would go. Their weapon systems are overheating, so observed as she watched the alien ship's heat signatures. They're firing too fast for their cooling systems to handle. Perfect, Hyun said. Wait for them to cycle down, then disable their remaining weapons. The Vorthak cruiser's firing rate began to slow as its systems overheated. Vector watched his weapons going offline one by one and felt something he had never experienced before in battle. Fear. Sub-leader, his tactical officer called out. The human ship is moving to attack position. All remaining weapons fire at will, Vector ordered, but there were no remaining weapons. The cruiser's guns had overheated and shut down automatically. The massive ship hung in space, defenseless and helpless. The Indomitable approached carefully, its own weapons trained on the disabled Vorthak vessel. Open communications, Hyun ordered. Jin worked at her console for a moment. Channel open, Captain. Sub-leader Vector, Hyun said calmly. This is Captain Hyun. Your weapons are disabled and your engines are offline. Will you surrender? Or do you need us to disable more of your systems? There was a long silence on the communication channel. Finally, Vector's voice came through, sounding defeated and confused. How did you do this? Our ships are the most powerful in the galaxy. Our weapons have destroyed entire fleets. Your ships are impressive, Hyun admitted. But impressive isn't the same as invincible. Will you surrender? Another pause. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, Vector said, I surrender. Captain June felt his hands shaking as he watched the sensor display. 3 Vorthak cruisers floated powerless in space, defeated by a single ship that was smaller than most civilian freighters. Around him, his crew stared in stunned silence. It's impossible, Min said for the 3rd time. But it had happened. The Vorthak, who had ruled the galaxy for 2 centuries, had been beaten. Not destroyed, not overwhelmed, but simply outfought by beings who understood war in ways the aliens never had. Open a channel to the human ship, June ordered. Channel open, Yu confirmed. Captain Hyun, this is Captain June. That was incredible. How did you do it? Hyun's voice came back calm and steady, as if defeating 3 enemy cruisers was just another day's work. We've had a lot of practice dealing with bullies, Captain June. The trick is not to fight them the way they expect. All across the Kepler system, automated beacons began broadcasting news of the battle. The signals would take days or weeks to reach other systems, but when they did, the galaxy would learn something impossible. The Vorthak could be beaten, and if they could be beaten once, they could be beaten again. War Prime Techmore stood in the command center of his fortress world, staring at the report that had just arrived from the Kepler system. His forearms trembled with rage as he read the impossible words again and again. 3 cruisers defeated by a single unknown vessel, he read aloud. Squadron Leader Morthek captured. Sub-Leader Vector surrendered without inflicting any damage on the enemy. The other Vorthak commanders in the room remained silent. None of them wanted to be the first to speak when the War Prime was in this mood. 200 years, Techmore continued, his voice growing louder. For 200 years, no one has successfully challenged our fleets. And now these humans think they can defy the Vorthak Empire with one small ship? He turned to his fleet commander. Assemble Battlefleet Prime, 50 dreadnoughts, full weapons load. I will personally lead them to crush these insects. Yes, War Prime, the fleet commander replied quickly. The fleet can be ready within 3 days. Make it 2, Thekmore snarled. And send word to all sector commands. Any ship that encounters these humans is to destroy them on sight. No warnings, no surrender offers. Complete annihilation. But the War Prime's orders came too late. The Indomitable was no longer in the Kepler system. Captain Hyun had taken her ship deep into the outer rim, where refugee populations lived in hidden colonies. These were the people who had escaped Vorthak rule over the years, building secret homes on worlds the Empire considered worthless. Captain, Chief Science Officer Hai reported from her station. I've finished analyzing the Vorthak technology we captured. Their weapons are powerful, but their design philosophy is centuries behind ours. Hai was a small woman with quick eyes and hands that never stopped moving. She could take apart any piece of technology and understand how it worked within hours. Explain, Hyun said. They build everything to be big and intimidating. Their ships are designed to scare enemies into surrendering, not to fight tactical battles. They've never needed to evolve because no one has challenged them in so long. Communications Specialist 1 looked up from her station. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the surface. The colony leaders want to meet with you." An hour later, Hyun sat in an underground meeting room with representatives from 6 different alien species. They had all fled Vorthak rule at different times, and their colonies had survived by staying hidden and helping each other. "You really defeated 3 Vorthak cruisers?" asked Elder Zahn, a tall being with silver skin and large eyes. "With just 1 ship?" "We did," Hyun confirmed. "But defeating 3 ships isn't the same as defeating an empire. We need to work together if we want to change things." "Work together how?" asked another representative, a being covered in thick fur with multiple legs. "The Vorthak have thousands of ships, millions of soldiers. But they think like an empire," Hyun explained. "They're used to fighting enemies who try to match them ship for ship. They don't know how to deal with guerrilla tactics, hit-and-run attacks, or coordinated resistance." She activated a holographic display showing the local star systems. "We can teach you how to fight them. Small actions at first. Disable their communications, disrupt their supply lines, rescue their prisoners. Each success will inspire others to join us." Elder Zahn leaned forward. "And if they send their entire fleet against us? Then we make sure they can't find us all at once," Hyun said. "We become their worst nightmare. An enemy they can't pin down and can't intimidate." Over the following weeks, the Indomitable moved from system to system like a ghost. They would appear, strike at Vorthak installations, and vanish before reinforcements could arrive. But more importantly, they were teaching others. Captain Jun commanded the destroyer Defiant, one of 3 new human ships that had arrived from Earth. His vessel was even smaller than the Indomitable, but it was fast and well-armed. "Remember," Jun told a group of alien pilots on a hidden asteroid base, "you don't try to outgun them. You outthink them. Hit their weak points and run before they can respond." The alien pilots listened carefully. They flew old freighters and converted mining ships, nothing that could stand up to a Vorthak cruiser in direct combat. But Jun was teaching them that direct combat wasn't the only way to fight. "Their supply convoys are poorly defended," Jun continued. "They've never needed heavy escort because no one has attacked them in decades. A few ships working together can disable a convoy and escape before help arrives. Commander Na of the frigate Relentless was working with ground forces on the other side of the galaxy. Her ship carried specialists who taught alien resistance fighters how to sabotage Vorthak equipment and rescue prisoners. The key is coordination," Na explained to a mixed group of rebels on a jungle world. "If we all strike at the same time across multiple systems, they won't know where to send their response fleets." The Vorthak Empire had never faced this kind of war before. They were used to crushing organized opposition with overwhelming force. But the growing resistance didn't give them clear targets to attack. War Prime Thekmor received reports from across his empire. Supply convoys attacked, communication stations destroyed, prisoners rescued from detention centers. Each incident was small, but there were dozens of them every day. "Find me these human ship," he ordered his intelligence officers. "I don't care what it costs. I want them destroyed." But the human ships were never where the Vorthak expected them to be. They struck at the edges of the Empire and vanished into the deep void between stars. Worse, every attack inspired more aliens to join the resistance. On a trading station in the Rigel sector, Captain Jun met with other independent miners and freighter captains. The station's cantina was packed with beings from dozens of different worlds, all talking about the same thing. "I heard they hit 3 supply convoys in the Vega system yesterday," one captain said excitedly. "Disabled the escorts and freed 200 prisoners. My cousin on Altair says the local resistance knocked out the planetary communications grid," another added. "The Vorthak couldn't call for help for 6 hours." Jun listened to the stories with growing amazement. For the first time in his life, people were talking about fighting back against the Vorthak instead of just surviving under their rule. "Anyone know how to contact these humans?" asked a young alien pilot. "I want to join their fight." An older captain laughed bitterly. "Join them? Kid, you just get yourself killed. The Vorthak will eventually crush this rebellion like they crushed all the others." But even as he spoke, the older captain didn't sound convinced. The resistance was different this time. It wasn't trying to build a fleet to match the Vorthak. It was spreading like fire through the galaxy. inspiring hope in species that had forgotten what hope felt like. Back on his fortress world, War Prime Thekmor studied the tactical reports with growing frustration. His battle fleet Prime had arrived in the Kepler system to find empty space. The humans were gone, and so were most of the civilian ships that had witnessed their victory. "They're using our own tactics against us," Admiral Morvac observed. "Hit and run just like we did when we were building the Empire." Thekmor turned to glare at his subordinate. "We use those tactics against primitives who couldn't coordinate their defenses. These humans are organizing every rebel group in the galaxy. Then we crush them all," Morvac suggested. "Destroy every system that shows signs of resistance. And rule over empty space?" Thekmor snapped. "The Empire exists to control productive worlds, not to create wasteland." The War Prime was beginning to understand something that terrified him. The humans hadn't just defeated 3 of his ships. They had done something much worse. They had shown the galaxy that the Vorthak could be beaten, and once that idea took hold in enough minds, even the greatest empire in galactic history might not be able to stop it. In the depths of space, the Indomitable received a coded transmission from Earth. More ships were coming. More humans who understood that sometimes the best way to fight a bully was to teach everyone else how to do it too. The Vorthak home system had never been attacked in its entire history. Massive defense platforms surrounded the fortress world, each one capable of destroying entire fleets. War Prime Thekmor stood in his command center, watching his forces prepare for the final battle. "They have to come here eventually," he told his assembled commanders. "The humans and their rebel allies think they can defeat the Empire, but they need to take the capital to truly win. When they arrive, we will crush them with the full might of our remaining fleet." Outside the fortress world, 300 Vorthak warships waited in defensive formations. It was the largest fleet ever assembled in one place, with enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. But the attack didn't come the way Thekmor expected. Captain June sat in the command center of his modified mining ship, now equipped with human weapons and shields. Around him, hundreds of other civilian vessels prepared for the most important mission of their lives. "Remember," came Captain Hyun's voice over the communication system, "we're not trying to destroy their fleet. We're trying to disable their ability to maintain control. Hit the command stations, the communication arrays, and the supply depots. Leave the ships alone unless they target you directly." The plan was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of a massive fleet assault, the humans had organized thousands of small ships from across the Empire. Miners, traders, passenger vessels, and refugees, all working together in a coordinated strike. "Phase 1 begins now," announced Admiral Tay, the commander of the human expeditionary force. Across the Vorthak Empire, the real attack began. On every major world, every military base, every administrative center, hidden resistance cells struck simultaneously. They didn't try to conquer territory. They simply shut down the systems that allowed the Empire to function. Communication networks went dark. Supply depots exploded. Prison camps opened their doors as guards found their weapons disabled and their vehicles destroyed. Administrative computers crashed as human-designed viruses spread through Vorthak networks. In the capital system, War Prime Thekmor watched his empire fall apart in real time. Reports poured in from across the galaxy, each one bringing news of another facility destroyed, another world in rebellion. "How are they coordinating this?" he demanded. "We destroyed their command ships weeks ago." "They don't have command ships," Admiral Morvac replied grimly. "They're using some kind of distributed network. Every resistance cell knows what to do without needing central orders." What the Vorthak didn't understand was that humans had learned to fight wars without traditional command structures. They used redundant communication systems, shared goals instead of specific orders, and trained individual units to make their own tactical decisions. "Sir," called out a sensor operator, "multiple contacts approaching the outer system. Hundreds of small ships." On the main display, the civilian fleet appeared. They looked like a swarm of insects next to the massive Vorthak warships, but they moved with purpose and coordination that the Empire had never seen from civilian vessels. "All ships open fire," Thekmor ordered. "Destroy them all." The Vorthak fleet opened fire with enough weapons to crack a planet, but the civilian ships scattered in all directions, using the same micro-jump tactics the Indomitable had pioneered. They appeared and disappeared like ghosts, impossible to target effectively. And while the great warships wasted their ammunition on empty space, smaller human vessels slipped past the defensive lines. Captain Jun's destroyer Defiant led a strike force against the main communication hub. Instead of trying to fight the defending ships, they simply disabled the massive relay station that allowed the capital to coordinate with the rest of the Empire. Commander, has frigate Relentless targeted the supply depots that kept the defense fleet fueled and armed. Her ship's precision weapons turned logistics centers into scrap metal, while barely damaging the surrounding civilian areas. They're not fighting us. Admiral Morvac realized with growing horror. They're dismantling us. Within hours, the Vorthak fleet found itself trapped in its own system. Their communications were down, their supplies were gone, and their support infrastructure was in ruins. The ships themselves were mostly intact, but they had nothing to shoot at and nowhere to go. War Prime, came a transmission from Captain Hyun's ship. This is Admiral Tay of the Earth Expeditionary Force. Will you surrender, or do we need to disable more of your systems? Thickmore stared at the communication screen in disbelief. You have a few hundred small ships. I have 300 dreadnoughts. How can you possibly think you've won? Because your dreadnoughts need fuel, ammunition, and orders to be effective, Tay replied calmly. You have ships, but you no longer have an empire. Your choice is simple. Surrender and help us build something better, or sit in that system until your crews get hungry enough to surrender anyway. The War Prime looked around his command center. His officers stared at their displays, trying to find some way to turn the situation around. But the humans had been thorough. Every system that supported the fleet was either destroyed or in rebel hands. This is impossible, Techmore said quietly. We had the most powerful military in galactic history. You had the most powerful military in a galaxy where no one knew how to fight back, Tay corrected. But power isn't the same as strength, and fear isn't the same as respect. Your empire was built on intimidation, not cooperation. When people stopped being afraid, it all fell apart. Captain June watched from his mining ship as the mighty Vorthak fleet began powering down its weapons. Around him, beings from dozens of different worlds worked together with a coordination the Empire had never achieved. Captain, Yu called from the engine room. We're receiving surrender signals from across the Vorthak fleet. Confirmed, Min added from the navigation station. The War Prime is requesting terms for surrender. 3 months later, Captain June stood in a new kind of assembly hall on the former Vorthak capital world. Representatives from hundreds of worlds sat together, working out the details of what they were calling the Galactic Cooperation Council. The humans had kept their promise. They hadn't conquered the Vorthak Empire. They had simply ended it and helped everyone else build something better in its place. Admiral Tay spoke to the assembly from a simple podium, without the grand displays of power the Vorthak had preferred. The goal isn't to create another empire, she explained. Empires rule through fear and force. We want to build a community based on mutual benefit and shared defense. Every world keeps its own government, but we work together on issues that affect everyone. Former War Prime Thekmor sat in the section reserved for Vorthak representatives. His people had been stripped of their weapons and their empire, but they hadn't been destroyed. The humans had insisted that everyone deserved a chance to be part of the new order. The Vorthak will serve as military advisors, Tay continued. They understand large-scale fleet operations better than anyone, but their role will be defensive, not aggressive. They'll help protect all of us, not rule over any of us. Captain Hyun approached June during a break in the proceedings. How do you think it's going? She asked. June looked around the hall where former enemies were working together to solve problems instead of fighting over territory. Better than I ever imagined possible. 6 months ago, I was hiding from Vorthak patrols and hoping they wouldn't notice my mining ship. Now I'm helping write the laws for half the galaxy. It won't be easy, Hyun warned. Building something is always harder than destroying it. There will be conflicts, disagreements, probably some wars. But not like before, June said with confidence. Before we fought because one group wanted to control everyone else. Now we can fight about real problems and work together to solve them. Through the great windows of the assembly hall, they could see ships from dozens of worlds in orbit around the former fortress planet. Human vessels worked alongside reformed Vorthak ships, with crews learning from each other instead of trying to destroy each other. As the months passed, the new Galactic Council faced many challenges. Some worlds tried to break away and form their own empires, Pirates and raiders took advantage of the transition period to attack trade routes. Old grudges between species flared into conflicts that required careful mediation, but each problem was met with cooperation instead of conquest. When the Kalari attempted to establish their own empire in revenge for their previous defeat, it was a joint, human Vorthak fleet that stopped them. When plague struck the Outer Rim worlds, ships from across the galaxy brought medical supplies and researchers. Captain June eventually gave up mining to become a full-time representative for the independent trader guilds. His ship Prosperity was retired to a museum, with a plaque that read, "Witness to the day the galaxy changed forever." The Indomitable returned to deep space exploration, its mission of peaceful contact finally possible, now that the galaxy was no longer ruled by fear. Captain Hyun and her crew discovered dozens of new worlds and species, each one welcomed into the growing community of peaceful civilizations. And in the depths of space, where new human ships continued to explore the unknown, crews carried with them the knowledge that sometimes the most powerful weapon against tyranny isn't a bigger gun or a stronger army. Sometimes it's just the willingness to